one of the biggest aspects of the curriculum that I've enjoyed has been the communication courses that Sloan offers. Communication is just totally core to everything that a consultant does. If you can't communicate the results that you have, even if your data is great, it doesn't really matter. And I think particularly coming from a PhD background where if you've ever listened to a PhD talk, they tend to have a lot to say, and it can be very complicated and maybe not very digestible. And I think the MBA really helped me focus in on in business contexts, how do you need to communicate in order to get your message across?
Welcome, everyone. My name is Terrell Williams, and I serve as the Associate Director here in the Office of Admissions. And I am going to be the moderator for today's conversation with our Management Consulting Club. We also have a representative here from our Career Development Office who will introduce himself in just a moment. But today is just an informal, conversation with our consulting club members to learn more about their experiences within the club, but also their journey to MIT Sloan. So, without further ado, I'll kind of give a high-level overview of our agenda for today. So we'll have our guests introduce themselves, kind of give a walkthrough of their pre-MBA life and then what they're currently doing now within the program. So I will go ahead and have our panelists introduce themselves.
As I'll start since I'm on the left. Hi, everyone. I am Sharon Fan. I am a second year MBA. I lived in London before Sloan. I worked in entertainment tech at a video streaming service as a content acquisition manager. And this past summer, or actually now last summer, I interned at McKinsey, and I will be returning to McKinsey in 4 months after I graduate in the New York office. Um, you say on campus, other stuff that I
Yes,
do.
other campus activities as well.
Apart from being the co-president of the Management Consulting Club, the MCC, I am also on the leadership team of the Asian American Alliance and the Wine Club. And I'm also a teaching assistant for a macroeconomics class here at Sloan.
Great. Hi, everyone. I'm Landon, also a second year MBA at Sloan. And prior to being at Sloan, I was completing my PhD in chemical engineering from MIT as a part of a dual degree MBA PhD program. I also was a summer consultant, but I was at BCG here in Boston. Um, let's see. Apart from also being one of the co-presidents of Management Consulting Club, I'm a part of Sloan Pride, also a TA on campus. So a lot of different activities.
Pass it over to you now, see for the Career Development Office.
Awesome. Glad to be in this space. And I have a much shorter laundry list compared to our amazing students. Thank you, Landon and Sharon. But myself, I'm a community engagement leader, senior associate director within the Career Development Office. I'm focused on our relationships directly with students through an advising lens. I also support the marketplace through relationships with employers. And then we also give lifetime access to alumni, in terms of career development. So we also support our alumni that come back and partner with us. So super excited to be in this space, and I look forward to answering some questions or maybe pointing in the right direction for resources when the time is right.
Thank you all for your intros. I want to start off with a very light question before we transition to like the hard-hitting questions. So I want to start with Landon and Sharon, specifically about your path to MIT Sloan. So could you share, ultimately what led you to choose MIT Sloan for your MBA?
I guess I can go answer that question in twofold: why the MBA and why Sloan specifically. So, as I mentioned, I worked in the tech industry in like entertainment, and I reached a point in my career where I was looking at, okay, I started from the long-term goals. Like if I look at the leaders in my company, like what were their paths, and I realized there's a pattern that they most of them had done an MBA, which could explain their breadth of kind of more business exposure, as well as from a consulting background. I'm still testing that hypothesis, but I realized that the immediate step is to do that MBA also to enrich my own like business knowledge. I did an undergrad degree in pretty academic key fields like econometrics and history. So I had never taken a single accounting class in my undergrad. So it's like, okay, in order to further grow in my business career, I probably need that foundational knowledge. So that led me to the MBA. And when I was looking at different schools, I think the like getting the feel of the student culture and the people was very important. And I visited all the schools that I applied to. I sat at Slafe for 2 hours, just like seeing people pass. Slafe is Sloan Cafe, which is like the in the middle of the Sloan main like building. And I really like the people that I've met there, the conversations that I eavesdrop. So like so far, everything has tracked. Like people that I've met here have been amazing.
Thanks for sharing.
Yeah, for me, as far as why an MBA, I, prior to starting my degrees, was working in engineering consulting. So I was doing um, chemical engineering work for different oil and gas companies, mining, and really got to a point where I realized there was sort of a niche where it would be better if more engineers understood business, and really advantageous to have someone who understands business that also knows engineering. And that sort of led me to my path of an MBA. It's a little bit less interesting of a story as why MIT Sloan. This particular program that I have is a PhD MBA program, and it's the only one that exists in the world, and it happens to be tied to MIT Sloan. I will say, I think the aspects that I really enjoyed about it is that because Sloan is attached to MIT, you get a lot of the academic rigor, the technicality, the analytic skills that I think are really critical in today's world and job market. And that was a super attractive part of Sloan to me.
Thank you both for sharing. I know both of you are in leadership roles within the Management Consulting Club. I know, Sharon, you're pivoting into consulting, and Lenny, you're kind of continuing on with that trajectory. But I want to ask, how did you both get involved with the Management Consulting Club? And can you talk about the process for individuals that may be interested in joining as a student here?
Sure, I can jump on this one first. Yeah, for me, like I had said, I did engineering consulting before, and when I was getting to come to my MBA, I was thinking, okay, do I want to try this management consulting thing and kind of attack problems from the business side instead? And it was really through my research that I sort of found out that Sloan had a management consulting club, and there's a web page that shows all the leadership and everything. And so by the time I had kind of come to Sloan, I had thought this is maybe as a career idea. And actually, my involvement with the club just started with Club Fest. So early on in your MBA career, they sort of have a night where every club has a table, and you can go up to the tables and chat with the leadership there, find out what the club is about. And because I had sort of had this interest, I stopped by Management Consulting Club table and started headed to the meetings, and that was the rest is history.
Mine's I guess a little bit more boring. But I knew that I wanted to do consulting, and and MBA is the perfect place to help me prepare for that. So even before I applied, I already knew that like I need to join a consulting club. From like talking to Sloanies before I applied and like after I got in and whatnot, like everyone's like, if you want to recruit for consulting, the MCC like provides a structure and like the kind of peer-to-peer knowledge sharing that is pretty critical in the recruiting journey. So that's how I joined as a member. And obviously, uh, during my first semester during recruiting, the MCC has helped me a ton with like getting me ready for interviews, helping me navigate the process, or even the more personal, like the the presidents on in a year above us really like served as like an informal mentor that like got me through the journey. So like I wanted to become a leader of the club to kind of give back and pay it forward to like help the next class of Sloanies to navigate the process.
And Steve, I want to bring you in for this next question as it pertains to individuals that are, you know, in the process of potentially transitioning into business school, specifically here at Sloan. For those early recruiting cycles like consulting, when do those career services support begins? And is there support prior to their matriculation?
Yes, I want to give a huge shout out to our, amazing panelists who are help us realize what type of supports can be helpful to students. So feedback is one of the main ways that we're able to really provide a supportive, process for students. I want to talk about the process that happens very, much after you've been accepted into, an institution, right? Is through these pre-MBA programs, right? So there are some consulting firms that offer before your first day of orientation and before you even get some resources, they offer engagement opportunities to have, a day in the life experience or a mini internship. And we can talk which programs do that, but consulting is one of the industries that open that pathway up. So as a career development office, it's our job to be aware of the various pathways into careers. Thus, this pre-MBA career pathway usually happening in the months of May and June, where these application seasons open up. Not only do we let you know where they exist on our website, we have a web page where we share some of the opportunities. I just posted one for analysis group the other day. Analysis group has an Ignite program, but what we like to do is provide support from an advising lens. So what we do is we have an email address that students can reach out to if they are looking for that level of support. We provide advising during that given time on which programs are available and how to engage them. Sharon had done an amazing job last year of making sure that the Management Consulting Club was involved in that process. Some of the interview processes involve case prep and behavioral prep and uplifting the preparation process for that. We also in the Career Development Office give some technical resources such as Management Consulted and some programs that you can use to, update your fast math skills and some of your prep skills in terms of communicating with an employer. So just making sure that we're communicative with you in the process. We know exactly the programs that you're interested in talking to. And then as well, what we provide is just support when engaging with those firms. Sometimes you may be in a position to have to make decisions around deadlines and when to join and things like that. And what we want to do is make sure you have access to as much information as possible to make an informed decision during that time. Okay, so glad to talk about that in more detail, but maybe I'll stay on a cliffhanger for right now.
I did have a follow-up question, Steve, as it pertains to individuals who may be in between potential job opportunities. So individuals that may be looking to accelerate within a specific industry, or those may be looking to make a full pivot. So could you kind of share about how Sloan helps those students decide like the best avenue for them?
Great place to start. I mean, first it's identifying self, right? So
Mhm.
we like to, identify in terms of a persona that you may align with as a career switcher or as somebody who's looking to advance within the career that you're in. Each persona may have a scope of duties that, maybe you're responsible to accomplish. And what we provide coming into the program are career navigator appointments that help you get familiar with not only the resources that are available at Sloan in their full capacity, but what networks are going to be helpful during this time. What type of readiness should I have as a candidate? We like to call it market readiness. What type of readiness should I have when I approach an employer conversation, when I approach an informational interview, when I approach my network looking to learn more? And we break that down in a very digestible framework and at a time before you need to be, ready for that engagement. So you'll see some language start to come out and some emails start to come out from our career services team about when you have access to book those career navigator appointments, when you start to get access to your Kerberos and your sign in and your email. It will be an overload of information, but what I want you to know is that you will be in a really good place to get started with engaging employers on day one, as long as you're engaging with the career development office. And we've got some supports for every stage that you may be in, whether you're looking to switch into a brand new career and you need to identify which skills are valuable for that career, or you're looking to, really go further and farther in the places you've already identified.
Appreciate that. Appreciate that, Steve. Sharon, I want to come back to you for this specific question about individuals looking to make a pivot. So, what is something you wish you'd known before diving into consulting at Sloan?
That's a great question. I think one thing that was helpful that I wish I'd done more was like I think before I got to the MBA, like obviously everybody at Sloan or a lot of MBA students come with like amazing experience from your previous professional or academic life. Just doing a bit of soul searching and actually going back to your MBA application and thinking about like what your strengths and I guess areas of growth are, and actually being very honest with yourselves, like, okay, like, is consulting like going to help me to achieve that? Number one. Number two, like, how is it gonna be helpful? Like, what kind of work should I be doing? Like, what should I be asking the firms in terms of like whether those like a consulting career path can actually help me like achieve those skill goals, those like professional goals, those exposure goals. So I wish I'd done a little bit more of that. I eventually got there during the fall semester, but let me tell you, the fall semester was very hectic. So it was a lot of like doing classes, like meeting new people, but also recruiting. So like having that quiet time before the MBA to actually just like jot down, okay, like in the MBA, I want to achieve goals one, two, three. Like, and then in consulting, I want to do one, two, three. And during the recruiting process and start formulating those questions early on is very helpful with the prep process, and also formulating like those early coffee chats conversation. That is a really critical part of the consulting recruiting process.
Sharon, you touched on the academic piece in terms of trying to balance that with, career goals. So I know Sloan does offer a very flexible curriculum where you're able to kind of maybe dive into certificate programs or, cross register across campus or go to Harvard and cross register there. Could you talk about some of the classes that you found to be very useful for your consulting journey? Landon, you can feel free to dive in as well and talk about your PhD route as well, kind of figure out how you've been able to balance those courses.
Yeah, I think I'll tackle this question in two ways. One is more the actual like class content way, and the second is on the actual skills that I learned in the class. So first on the content side, I think like what comes to mind, like three classes. As I mentioned, I didn't come from like a very business like undergrad, so I've actually found the finance classes to be very helpful. So I took corporate finance in last spring, where like I had to go comb through 10Ks, do like all the modeling on and all that. And in my internship, I actually like owned like a work stream that I had to benchmark financials of like a few listed companies. Like, thank God I took corporate finance, because otherwise, like I wouldn't even know what metrics to start looking and how to like understand them. So like having that foundation, like that safety of like learning in a classroom, like asking those questions, definitely helped. Like a sec, like so corporate finance, and I'm in a class called healthcare finance right now by Professor Andrew Lowe, and there are some like pretty like practical linkage that he was able to make that helped me like think about, okay, like how do you apply finance in a specific sector? Like it's actually very applicable. Like healthcare is a great way to learn finance. So uh those two. The third class is more like a macroeconomics class. So I took a class with Professor Rigabone last spring, and then I cross-registered at the Harvard Kennedy School to double down on the macroeconomics and how it linked to like public policy and government decision making. That's like a little bit of a like personal nerdy interest of mine, like macroeconomics, how like say technology changes how our market works, how our like society works. And I think like that kind of coursework helps enrich like the way that I think about it. So in consulting, like there is always a bucket. It's like, okay, external factors like that puts in the meat of what that actually might mean. And I'll just quickly touch on the skill level, especially in the fall semester when you're being put in a core team of like 6 to 7 people, where you take all your classes together and you do all your homework as group deliverables. That was a very helpful like practice ground to practice like communicating very clearly with your peers about what you can and cannot commit to, working on timelines, what like expectations are, which obviously that's the name of the game in consulting, like teamwork, and how do you communicate expectations.
I think for me, one of the biggest aspects of the curriculum that I've enjoyed has been the communication courses that Sloan offers. Communication is just totally core to everything that a consultant does. If you can't communicate the results that you have, even if your data is great, it doesn't really matter. And I think particularly coming from a PhD background, where if you've ever listened to a PhD talk, they tend to have a lot to say, and it can be very complicated and maybe not very digestible. And I think the MBA really helped me focus in on, in business contexts, how do you need to communicate in order to get your message across? And one class I'll highlight in particular is called Communicating with Data. I think it's sort of the classic, like before you go into your summer in consulting, it's a great class to take. But you basically are able to find out like what makes a good slide. How do you communicate data and a message effectively, verbally and non-verbally? And I think really that those core courses that you take in communication plus that communicating with data class really helped prep me for my summer in consulting and ultimately my career.
Thanks for sharing that, Landon. The communication piece is very key in terms of the application process as well. So, for those of you that have gone through the process, you understand that we do have two video questions. So, that is your first introduction to communicating. So, being able to kind of share more about your background and who you are, but also having a randomly generated question that kind of gives you a glimpse of what it's like to be in a class and you're cold called. Like, how do you respond to that question? So, that's what we're truly measuring within those videos. So, a lot of this does align with what you're going to experience within the program as well. So we're getting close to time. I see some questions coming in through our Q&A, so that's great. I want to wrap up with a few more, then we'll transition to open Q&A. So Steve, I want to come back to you as pertains to the outcomes or our interactions across the globe. So for students that may be joining us today that are in an international environment and working across multiple geographies, what support does Sloan offer those who are navigating the international consulting recruitment process?
Yes, we'd love to, work with all student types, right? So, from a job search accountability group, we love to provide accountability groups specifically for students that are scoped around similar searches, whether you're an international student or you're looking for a particular industry such as tech and product management or consulting, as we're talking about here. So we definitely provide job search accountability groups. We have a wonderful program called our Career Peers program, in which second year MBA students uplift their career stories and provide a litmus test to coaching and expectation and what to go through in the market. We have a number of programming opportunities that exist in the career development office that students can engage in as well in the fall as well as in the spring. We just had a session that was actually sponsored by the Career Advising and Professional Development Office, where we partnered with them. That's the main campus career services department. We are the Sloan Career Services Department, so we specialize in the degree programs here at Sloan. But what we did was we, hosted a discussion in a fireside chat where a professional who specialized in international recruitment started to talk about the advantages of the hidden job market and how to leverage networking and informational interviewing and skill assessment for your international job search, and how, some of the complexities of being an international student may intersect with how you network and your manner of going about searching. We very much talk about that process of networking and how to do it in this particular environment if you're seeking a job, particularly in the US, or you are seeking jobs internationally. And then one thing that we do every single year, no matter if you're, where you're looking for a role, is we produce an employment report that everybody has access to. You can find it on the career development website. This is cdo.mit.edu. Right at the top end of that page, you will see a link for the MBA employment report. And what that is it pretty much gives statistics on where our graduates are going for full-time and internship recruiting, or excuse me, full-time and internship placement. We talk about the top industries. The top, if you haven't noticed by now, is consulting, where about 32% of our class of 2025 went for full-time jobs. So when you start to think about like where are students going, where should I be targeting, we give lists of companies, salary data, internship salary data, functional experience, signing bonuses. So a really good snapshot of where our students are going. And that is listed for both, our domestic job categories and our international job categories as well.
Appreciate that, Steve. So I have a two-part question now. So this is actually a question that came in the chat that's actually affiliated with the question I was going to ask. So I want to kind of tie them both together. So this pertains to the Management Consulting Club itself. So can non-MBA students join the Management Consulting Club? And then the second part of the question is, are there students who successfully recruit into consulting without joining the consulting club?
I can take this one. Yes, so non-MBA students can join the Management Consulting Club. It's only for Sloan students, though. So these are all of the degree programs that are housed within Sloan, can join the Management Consulting Club. What I'll say about that is the vast majority of students that do join tend to be MBAs, and a lot of the trainings that we provide and opportunities we have kind of align with that recruiting timeline. But we certainly have people in, for example, the Masters of Finance program or the Sloan Fellows program that do join management consulting. The recruiting timelines look a little bit different for those programs and for the positions that they're looking for, but we still offer support, and particularly when it comes to interview prep and case prep, still offer those resources to those programs. And then on the other side of things, can you remind me of the other part of the question? Sorry, I'm forgetting. I had it and then now it's
Yeah,
gone.
so are there individuals who are successful within the consulting realm that
Right.
don't join the club?
Yes, so every year there are, and I would say it's a very small minority of people that are. The vast majority come through Management Consulting Club, and I think, and Sharon, feel free to fill in what I'm missing here, but I think the consulting club does a very good job of walking you through the process, letting you know what the key deadlines are, kind of the key metrics you need to be measuring yourself against. And certainly you can do it without that help. I think it's a lot harder to do it without that help. But I have seen people that are not members of Management Consulting Club that do successfully get an internship or a job.
I'll just add like a super quick point. Like one of the other things that at the MCC we try to build is a community of people that are also recruiting. That's great for technical reason. You get like case partners and buddies to like just practice interview, which is like practice makes perfect. Also applies to case interviews. Second thing is like the moral support because it's a pretty intense process. Having the camaraderie like of your fellow MCC friends like doing it together, yeah, like does make a big difference.
So I want to wrap up with this final question, as it pertains to just your experience at Sloan so far. You all are coming up on graduation time, transitioning back into the workplace. So for me in admissions, we get a lot of questions about the process, and I want to hear from the students about, what piece of advice would you give an individual that's looking to pursue a MBA? And also, second part of that, what advice would you look to give somebody looking to go into consulting for their next career path?
I'm glad to start while our wonderful panelists think. And I think the value of networks are what are very important. Part of the things we like to underscore in the career development office are to, be as involved and as impactful as you can, not only with your academic pursuits and your career pursuits, but also with the folks that are walking the halls next to you, right? MIT is amazing, but it's a maze at the same time, right? So there's always something awesome going on campus. So your ability to have a network of folks that you can engage with, talk about your interests, and they can refer the other great things that are happening, maybe a couple doors down that you just didn't have a chance to kind of see the email on. So I want to encourage you as much as possible to talk about the things that you're interested in and make connections and get involved in networks. And if you lack some networks, right, hit us up in the career development office. We're glad to do a navigator appointment and tell you about the networks we're familiar with to point you in the right direction.
Yeah, definitely echo that. Like, it's really rare to be like in such close proximity of such a wide variety of people from all walks of the professional life. So, if you're joining consultant to also like figure out what industry you might be interested in, like working in long term, it is a great way to just chat to your classmate that has worked in those industries. A second thing that I would add would be just to like be curious and like actually lean into your nerdy tendency and just like go to all the interesting, like honestly very world class like speakers and talks and seminars. I saw like a chat on like AI. Like one of the very privileged thing of being at Sloan is like a lot of the experts are at MIT and at Sloan, and like the fact that McKinsey co-authors like AI reports with like MIT, and then the firms do actually like partner with MIT and other institutions on like these things. They also actually asked us as summer interns, like, okay, how do you use AI? What did you learn in school that can you like tell us how you use it in school and maybe like try it on your project? And like things move so fast that like you're not you like being at the school environment, you're probably at pretty close to like the frontier of what's happening. So that's a very privileged position to be bringing into workforce and like experiment with how you use those tools, learn how to be like skilled with those tools is like a great way to spend the MBA, I think.
I think I agree with everything Steve and Sharon have both said. The one thing I'll add is to not forget that while you are at MIT Sloan, you're also at MIT. And there is a huge network of people outside of Sloan that, like Sharon mentioned, are doing state-of-the-art AI research or maybe research in an industry that you're interested in that maybe you'll be consulting for. Um, Try and leverage that network as well. And again, start at Sloan, start with those people that are close to you, but always be looking to be introduced to the next person that you're sort of interested in talking with and has expertise in the area that you like.
I'll give a real life example. Like yesterday, I'm walking from main campus back to Sloan and I passed the media lab. I saw a student. He's like, Steve, you got a 15? I want to introduce you to somebody. I go upstairs to the sixth floor of the media lab. What are they doing? They're hosting the MIT Sports Summit. Who's on stage? The executive director of our MIT Sports Lab and the president of the Spurs. Just talking about innovation and how they're looking for new VR support for player development. And I'm like this is just happening. I had no idea, and all I had to do was just not walk up 6 flights of stairs, but take an elevator. But it's the power of the network and the people that you talk about the things that you're interested with. You know, you would be remiss to do those things because there's a wonderful chance that they have something going on, you know, just next door that could tickle your fancy.
100%. I echo everything that you all said. And I'll double down on what Landon said about, the MIT ecosystem. So you're an MIT student first and then a Sloan student. So that means you have access to the classes, the community, the network that you can kind of lean on as a student here. So there's no, limited access you have, or you have access to everything, which could be a gift and a curse because you want to be able to maximize your time while you're here, but you can't do everything. So just being able to kind of map out your time, lean on your second year students, kind of figure out how they navigated it, lean on the career development office, kind of figure out what's your path here and what's available to you within the ecosystem. So definitely kind of leverage that as a student here. So I know we're getting close to time, but I definitely want to pivot into our Q&A portion of the setting. We got a lot of questions in the chat. I want to be able to get to as many as I can. Sharon, I want to start with you on this one because you did mention AI in terms of the changes that's happening within that space. So how do you think AI will change consulting and the job market after the MBA? Steve, you can feel free to jump in on this as well.
So it is already being used on the job.
Mhm.
Like it's actually heavily encouraged that we experiment using it. Obviously, as we all know, AI still has its limitation, and I think that's where like the value proposition of Linda and I and all of you future consultants would be like to actually know how to use that tools like wisely. There's still like I think a lot of the space from like what I've been hearing at my internship as well as at school, like everyone is still trying to figure it out how to use it efficiently and like actually figure out what that like next like development might be. So I think like everything is still moving, like just keeping an open mind and like keep learning and like just know that it's gonna change is very important.
And I'm glad to jump in here. And, you know, in terms of the work that we're doing with our Office of Teaching and Learning, you know, they're doing a wonderful job of providing, you know, AI and making sure that it's available through the curriculum and that the, you know, faculty is working on, you know, ways to bring it into the classroom. But as we see it, you know, involved in the career development of our students, it's that, you know, you find yourself to having to choose a persona to belong in. Just like you talked about with career, am I a switcher? Am I an advancer? Am I, you know, a third category, right? Or same thing with AI, right? Am I, you know, we like to have categories. Am I a user of AI? Do I use it typically in my role? I have domain expertise with it and it enhances the productivity and decision making of the role that I'm in. We've also talked about an AI translator, somebody that bridges technical AI capabilities with enterprise strategy across multiple business functions, right? Somebody who's at a higher level in the organization with rolling down the use of AI. And then, you know, a third tier that we talked about is being a builder, right? And how do you design, build, and deploy productional AI systems that solve very complex business problems? So us in the, you know, career development office, we're all about talking about like which persona do you maybe belong to and how can you position yourself with a hiring manager or, you know, some of the companies you're looking to join talent wise. We're seeing that students are experiencing this in the interview room in terms of, you know, leveraging the experience they're building and working with through AI and talking about business process. So we're here to support and coach through these areas, and we're developing frameworks that you can use, you know, strategically as you go about engaging firms, you know, who are leveraging AI and your experience there.
Appreciate you for sharing those AI buckets that we have here at Stone. I definitely think it's useful for people to kind of align with one of those particular buckets and kind of figure out how they can jump to that next bucket if possible while they're here at Sloan. Len, I want to come back to you. I have a specific question about your PhD MBA kind of route. Could you please talk a little bit more about the one and only, as you mentioned, PhD plus MBA program at Sloan and how it might have given you an advantage, if any, in streamlining your path into consulting?
Good question. I don't know that it necessarily gave me any particular advantage. I guess maybe the one advantage would be my sort of analytical and mathematics skills that you need to sort of get past these consulting interviews were very well practiced and something that I had a lot of success with. But I think the fact that that background didn't necessarily give me any advantage is really a testament to whatever background you come from. If consulting sounds interesting to you, you can pivot and make, be successful. So Sloan provides you with those resources. And, if you're afraid because this is an industry you've never heard of, I think that's where the CDO comes in, where you can familiarize yourself with the industry. That's where Management Consulting Club comes in, where we walk you through the process and provide you with mentorship opportunities to, speak with people that have been in your shoes and really be successful.
And I want to stick with the career goal aspect of your journey. We talked about like all these different things that are available to you at Sloan, but could you share, Sharon and Landon, how did your MBA career goals evolve once you became part of the school? You may have came here with one thing that you really wanted to do, and like, oh wow, I didn't know I could do that. So how did they evolve over time while you've been a student?
I'll start. Like, I think I came in with like a fake hypothesis that, okay, like, be it in consulting or like in industry, in the long term, I want to do something that has to do with like technology's benefit to people through like entertainment and like through talking to people and like working in like class projects. I worked in like a venture building class, called Mobility Ventures. Like, I'm thinking like that I want to do more work in consulting that's more towards like how like the business society impact kind of things, like being more intentional about like what it means to be have like certain business decisions made, like how does it actually impact our overall economy and society. And I think that has evolved and like almost not evolve is a not the right word, but more like enriched my career goals and what I might want to do after graduation.
Yeah, for me, I think similar to Sharon, I sort of came in recognizing that I think I wanted to do management consulting. But as I was at Sloan, and I actually also sort of fell in love with finance and come to love that aspect of things, it was sort of like, oh, okay, I do have this technical background, and it would be really cool to serve consulting clients in sort of the industrial goods, like heavy industries type things, but I also really enjoy finance. So maybe as I go into, my full-time career, I'll kind of explore the world of finance through consulting as well.
Awesome. So Sharon and Lana, I want to stay with you on this one, but Steve, feel free to jump in. This is as it pertains to sponsored consultants that transition into the MBA program. Could you share how sponsored consultants can become more involved in the management consulting club? And what are the most valuable ways that they can contribute and which resources would be most helpful to focus on? I know that's a three-parter, but we can start one by one if you need to. So how can consultants become more involved in MCC?
I think actually all three are very related. Top of my head, there are two aspects. One is more like tactical, and the second one is more actually like the uh consulting as a career path help. So technicals are very obvious, like case prep, like always great to have like people that have done the job to, and like with the perspective of the different firms to come help classmates that are recruiting. The second part on exploring consulting as a career path, both Lan and I seemed pretty like set on consulting as our career path coming in, but a good cohort of our classmates weren't. So they were deciding if consulting was the right fit or actually what kind of consulting, what kind of work, what kind of geographies. And that's when the coffee chats with like our classmates and peers are very helpful. Actually, I also like lean quite into that, like to actually just fine tune like some of my understanding of the job. Having your perspective as a sponsored student is very helpful. So, like they all give very candid, honest like perspectives, which is highly appreciated by everyone that's recruiting.
Yeah, the thing I was going to mention is when you come to Sloan for your first semester, you're put into what we call Oceans. So it's just a cohort of people that you take all of your first semester classes with. And I would say, as a sponsored consultant, get to know the people in your ocean that are recruiting for consulting and try to develop relationships with them because they're certainly going to have questions. Whether it's their career switcher and they want to know what the job is like, or they're more like Sharon and I, where we sort of knew we wanted to do consulting but need some refinement on what exactly consulting is. I think getting involved in that community can be really, really impactful. And then obviously with the case prep and everything, you have that consulting job under your belt, and so it helps to get a case from someone who's done the job before.
I'm glad to jump in here in terms of resources again, from the career development office lens for sponsored students. It may be the first time that they're coming back to, a job search when they're looking for an internship, right? Everybody has a unique journey, but, if you're a sponsored student looking for an internship outside of consulting, it's very helpful to understand timelines for different industries. Maybe you're looking to gain some skills or experience that you've never explored before. So those are new networks. So what we like to provide in the very onset of your experience, and you'll see more information, is called Career Core in the Career Development Office, in which we walk through various industries and careers to educate you on the timelines available, the networks and the industries, and the functionalities available to apply to. So if you find yourself being a sponsored candidate from consulting and you're thinking about some different career paths, it's best to, explore Career Core in the fall. It happens very early in September, just as core is getting kicked off. But we want to make sure that, again, you have enough information to be as dangerous as possible in the job market. And danger is good.
Thank you all for your insight so far. I want to wrap up with this final question. I think is a good kind of close for us today, as it pertains to business school identities. So, business schools and their teaching styles tend to have a reputation of catering specifically to consultants. Do you think that's the case with MIT? And if not, could you provide specific examples of how MIT is slightly different in their approach?
I have one that comes right to mind. I think like there are two evidence for it, and it has to do with how with at MIT in the core semester, there's a pretty Sloan signature class called Data Model Decisions, which is like an applied statistics class, which I think is pretty representative of like the general like hope that the school wants everyone to graduate Sloan with like an understanding of how to use data properly, how to understand problems in a more quantitative lens. That is I've found to be very helpful in my internship as well as actually in my pre-Sloan career as well. Like knowing how to understand data, how to work with data is important. That also comes up in a second class, competitive strategy, one of another core elective class that you could choose, and I highly recommend it. The professor Donsel likes to say like strategy without data is just poetry. So I think that speaks to that we don't just talk about like theories and like hypotheticals. We like to look for data and like evidence to back up our claims, and I think that is a very helpful like way to think about consulting. Landon, I don't know if you have anything.
Yeah, echo everything you said. I'll say there are those classes at Sloan that are kind of more your traditional business school classes where it's very case method and you're sort of cold called and all of that fun stuff that you hear about business school. But I think Sloan is a really unique place where you get that traditional business education combined with all of these other teaching modalities and methods that really round things out. So you're not just, you know, the same MBA that everyone gets. It's sort of your own experience that you have.